In 2000, our guest's diverse musical upbringing began to suddenly make a lot of sense as the whirlwinds of his albums his parents had at home merged with his sudden discovery of hip-hop and slam poetry, all in a single summer. 17 years later, he's shared stages with rap luminaries like A$AP Rock and Gift of Gab, all while trying to float his sneaker habit by disguising himself as a mild-mannered IT specialist here in Chicago. Please give a warm welcome to Edward Moses.
All right. Got this right up.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. You'll forgive me, this is not necessarily the traditional medium for displaying works by rappers, I suppose. So this has caught me a little bit by surprise. First and foremost, thank you to the organizers of Tuesday Funk for taking mercy upon a curmudgeon such as myself. But I'll explain this, and then there'll be something further to explain it in the end. I was born in 1984 in Cook County Hospital, the only son amongst 3 daughters of a Chicago police officer and a CPS teacher. So either way, I turned out I was going to end up being neurotic about something. My parents decided that after seeing I was able to maintain a little bit more rhythm than my dad had, that it was a good idea to put me into music. So they stuck an instrument in my hand, and I really didn't get into it. The first instrument you ever present your child with, when it's a trumpet, you're going to want them to stop playing. Then my parents put me in front of a guitar, and it sort of coincided with the fact that one of my only cousins, who happened to be a metalhead, sort of sets headphones on my ears in 1988 with Master of Puppets blaring and says, "Listen to this." My parents looking at I sincerely recall my dad looking in the rearview mirror as he's playing America and Doobie Brothers and Allman Brothers over the stereo, and looking back as to why I'm doing this over and over again. No, Battery was not on Master of Puppets. I'm about to throw my creds away. But anyway, as some song well above 160 BPM was playing, and my cousin just sort of smiling evilly to himself in the corner, it's like, I've got him. What it grew up into was being a person that was more so a fan of punk and DIY and hardcore and metal, all the way up to about 14 years old. At 14 years old, I am the picture-perfect icon of what my parents expect me to be. National Honor Society, Who's Who Among American high school students, National Math and Science Olympiad, placed 2nd in the country, by the way. Yeah! I'll be damned if I can remember any of those formulas now. And amongst everything else, my mom is sort of looking at me and just is not worried. However, what is happening is that on the weekends, I'm wandering out to a neighborhood on the south side of the city known as South Shore. It is one of the last bastions of affluent black families left in the city of Chicago that was not destroyed by redlining. My cousin and his parents who live there, this is a cousin I grew up with, his name is Kyle. Kyle and I were effectively, that was my twin brother. For years and years and years, it was road trips. It eventually turned into high school. It was not grammar school. It was arguing over anime. It was a bunch of everything at once. And then suddenly, it was probably the most important thing that's happened to me in my musical life. Around this same time, I'm emerging into high school and getting a chance to get a taste of my first English classes where I'm not writing on a prompt, where I'm being told to express myself genuinely on a piece of paper as long as it fits on one side and is in legible handwriting. Fits on one page is one thing. Legible handwriting was never my strength. My professors are all telling me, it's like, you have an interesting gift for writing. You have an interesting gift for putting something that becomes intangible or perhaps incorrigible into something that people can digest openly and perhaps respond to. And I'm thinking to myself, like, great. So what did I get in the last paper I turned in? On the other side of things, during the weekends where we are coming home from high school, my cousin Bobby is playing Muse, and he is bringing the ubiquitous set of Technics 1210 Mark II turntables to my cousin Kyle's house. He's bringing a mixer that looks as though it is held together by bird shit and prayers. And most importantly, he is bringing something that allows us to hook all of this setup fancy and yet downtrodden into the back of Kyle's Iowa stereo and to blast whatever he has brought in a record bag that he has hastily put together out into the rest of this gigantic apartment while Kyle's parents are out for Sunday brunch. Now, the first time you try to present Metallica to kids that live on the South Side, it gets a little weird. Because you sit down and you try to play them something like Orion, and you're trying to speak about the movements and some of the same inspirations that you found in the jazz that your dad made you listen to, and the Motown soul that your mom set you down in front of, and lists of 45s and cutting your fingers on the edge of paper record sleeves, and you're trying to relate it somehow to people who look like the most insane hillbillies on the face of the earth, doing things to guitars that they were not meant to do. And then trying to relate it to kids who were learning to spin on their heads and write on walls illegally. And for the first time in my family, at least amongst my generation of cousins, there was such a vast disconnect. There was a chasm, there was a schism. And then Bobby plays me a song, and he says, "This might find you." And he plays me a song by a group named Company Flow called Patriotism. And when Bobby plays me Patriotism, all of that National Honor Society, second place in National Math and Science Olympiad, everything, all of that is my everyday thought begins to circle the bowl slowly. And I'm immediately thinking to myself as he's playing me this mixtape, and I take the headphones off, he's like, "What do you think?" And I say, "Is there more?" In a summer, he educates me forwards and backwards upon a history of hip-hop extending from effectively 1999 back to 1979 and forward to the year that we were currently in. I spent every single bit of the money, etc., that I had for my birthday at Dr. Wax in Hyde Park, buying records that I genuinely could not afford and standing around and looking at legends that I would look up to this day. Namely, the man that convinced me that maybe it was time to turn this weird, verbose, neurotic set of habits that I had as to writing things down into a rap career. And if anyone here does not know who Quell is, go find out. Because I saw Quell in a cipher with probably 13 people that did not deserve to be there. People who were effectively stumbling over their words as Quell says a line that later pops up in a song that I do not realize is his initially. People in graveyards are speaking of us, seeking to touch those rainbow demons breathing beneath graffiti buffs, and I was trapped. I was done. I literally came home and shoved all of the Megadeth and the Metallica and the Slayer aside and said, "We'll get to it a little bit later." Tribe Called Quest's Midnight Marauders became my gospel for a summer. Back in the days when I was a teenager, before I had status and before I could cop a pager. And I'm like, yeah, I'm broke too. A year later, I am attempting to akin myself to a status that has only been acquired by a couple of graffiti writers in Chicago's history, something innocuously referred to as All City, which means you have a piece that is taller than you in every side of the city, north, south, west, and someplace in Indiana. There are a lot of great graffiti writers that went to Gary and needed help getting out. So my cousin Kyle, now seeing that we are growing through this together, we are rapping, we are breakdancing, we are DJing, and we are writing graffiti together. My dad at this time is a Chicago cop. Can you imagine what this is like? Basically coming home from high school, your book bag full of textbooks and black books. Your alias has been plastered all over the white bread neighborhood you live in. Beverly had never seen a terror like Octo. So in between doing all of this, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, all I have to do is keep the grades up and my parents aren't going to ask any questions. I go downtown on weekends. I scrawl my name in 1,000,001 Technicolor pieces on labels that I have stolen from postal offices, with markers that I have stolen from True Values, and paint cans that I have stolen from Menards, and I am posting up everywhere that I can. We are a tandem, we are a team. We go out, we stick labels, we try to avoid getting caught, we have a slice of pizza, we go home. And then one day, I am not only drawing labels, I'm putting together pieces. I'm writing my thoughts down in something a little bit less complicated and a little bit more complicated than, here is my thesis, here is the backup to it, here is a concluding paragraph. And my AP English teacher, Miss Stamler, who had lived one of the most interesting lives I have ever heard about. She swam in the Amazon River when she was 16 years old. This woman was 65 by the time she had gotten to me, and to me, she was effectively the oracle at Delphi. And I asked her, after I gave her one of my pieces, some piece of slam that I had written from a class that I had taken 15 minutes of, and she looks at me and she says, "You can't turn this in for an assignment, but it's good, but it's not good enough." "It's not good enough" became the rallying cry for my entire rap career. It's terrifying to think that when you spend 60 minutes recording 3 minutes of a song over and over and over again and trying to get that last little bit of breath control just perfect, to delineate it, to line it out, to tell it, to stay straight, to march forward, to look ahead proud, that suddenly something isn't right, or you listen to it after it's been mastered and your studio engineer is tired of your bullshit. And you say, "It's not good enough, let me do it again." And it harkens back to something I heard my mom say. In 6th grade, there was a history exam. Miss Rowan was the teacher, and she told us in some degree of beautiful mercy that the test was going to be open book. Guess who left their book at home? Guess who wrecked the curve for the class? I cannot tell you how mad my bullies were. Like, literally, I came home with a purple mark underneath my eye of some kid calling me a racial slur and telling me that I wasn't that smart. My mom, when she sat down and she saw it, you know, we had been through the bullying business and etc. I was a shrimp of a kid. I was gentle. I always tried to be. My parents wanted to raise me with an idea of empathy for the world, so therefore I tried to practice that empathy elsewhere and everywhere that I could, in every place and every person that I could touch. And yet, when I sat down in front of my mom and I explained this to her, that I'd gotten a 95 out of 100 on an open book test where I'd forgotten my book at home, she said, "You could have done better." And my sisters are at the table. My twin sister, Ariel, looks at me, looks at my mom, and a grimace just effectively shoots across her face. And my oldest sister, Michelle, looks at my mom and says, "He got a 95, and he forgot his book at home. You know how forgetful he is. He remembered everything that was on that test. Isn't that good?" And my mom, just sort of looking down and realizing the breadth of her actions, sort of said, "Well, a 95 is very good, but the next time you shouldn't forget your book at home." Flash forward, I am 17. The college admission letters begin flooding in, but I'm not paying attention to them. Instead, I'm paying attention to when the idle moments are going to be at home when my parents are not home, and I cannot listen to music, or I cannot listen to the metal that I have shoved aside. I'm looking for a quiet moment that I can take to take my own life. I'm staring literally down the barrel of my dad's service revolver. He left it at home. I knew where it was. And I stood there and I waited for the right moment or the right reason to let my thumb finish depressing down on the trigger of a .357 and tell myself finally that I had nothing better to give to the world. And then rap found me again. One of my best friends from high school, with his parents' permission, somehow had set up a recording studio in his basement. Now, mind you, this basement was terrifying. There were literal mice, literal roaches, and literal mold. And I had asthma. And I'm thinking to myself, fuck it, it's fine. And down there, for the first time, I get asked a question, what's your name? And I'm like, Edward. It's like, no. What is your name? Where do you find this identity that you hide behind when your pen bleeds dry and your paper still runs full? And I had to think about it. I was obsessed with the Matrix at the time. So I named myself first aptly Agent Smith. Then someone said, it's like, well, no one's gonna know that's you. I'm like, why? And one of the producers I was working with, Lance, said, it's like, well, Smith is a white dude's name. And so I said, well, Agent Moses then. It's like, Agent Mos. Cut off the ES. I'm like, well, people are gonna think I'm biting Mos Def. It's like, well, fuck what everybody else thinks. Do what you have to do to make this happen. And make this happen versus not good enough are now clashing. They are butting heads along the side of a mountain. They are headbanging against one another. And in the background, my dad is shadow boxing, saying, stay focused, school's important. Stay focused, there's a lot of distractions out here. Stay focused. I'm worried that your interest in this may make you end up in the same place as some of the people that I'm dealing with out here. You are a child. You're not what your art thinks it represents. Now comes teenage rebellion. Not just graffiti, but me bringing my dad in and sitting him down. I had just gotten the Beastie Boys' Hello Nasty. And I sat my dad down to watch the video for Intergalactic. And my dad sat there and he absorbed it. He wants to be involved in his child's life. And at the end of the video, you sort of give that approving look back as a child as you're showing your parents something. And my dad is nodding. And he turns around and he asks me a question that I've been chasing ever since. What's the sample in that song? The record is somewhere downstairs in my collection. Go find it. My dad, for being absolutely not interested in anything I was doing with respect to being aggressive and wearing my pants slightly below my waistline, suddenly found a reason for me to be more interested in rap music and just sort of pushed. At 33, I'm a mess as an artist. As I said before, I'm neurotic, but I'm really neurotic to a fault now. Things that I think are done means that you're gonna take it through about 6 more revisions. It's just fine. But the scariest thing is writing a song to someone that perhaps you know will not listen to it, or perhaps will not listen to it in the same way. I spent a couple of my albums, my interests, writing songs to my parents. Songs that I knew they wouldn't listen to. Songs that I knew they wouldn't discover. Much like them having the respect not to go in my high school book bag, where all the paint markers and the caps and the notebooks and the records and the needles and everything else were. They wanted to let me develop just as I was. But one day, my parents are going to have to sit down and listen to this song, and I am terrified for them too, because there comes a point as an artist where you have to make yourself not only vulnerable, but vulnerable to a very, very specific set of people. My family know that I'm involved in this. They do not know the depth of it. They know that I play places. They do not know what times. And it's true. And they know that they are proud of me for it. But that pride extends all the way through things that I have done, much in the same way that you look at something that you have created and or raised. And as my dad sort of looks at me, he sort of looks at me with pride and wonder and confusion, as in, what the hell have I inspired? And my mom tells my dad he's just fine. That being said, this is a song for my parents that they will again likely never hear. I will attempt to enunciate no rap cadence here. Well, here we are. Handmade wax wings are flying well so far. The inevitable crash is counted past dead last, running behind a warm day with the wind at our backs, and we're coasting. Belly full, exhale a little stress. Today is for today, right now is what's next. Tomorrow is a blind corner, we know it a little less. A hazy distance of cobwebs forecasting another mess. And that's my cue as custodian, keeping it clean, polishing them trophy dreams of living past 15. No breaks or benefits, no raises, no compliments, no comments, just common sense, all consciousness, no providence. Just me and my memories, my maladies, my malaise, a song hummed in a hallway, no listeners, no praise. No foolish fantasies and no diluted hope, just a kid from the south side of Chicago with some complicated rap quotes. Raised to think of everybody else first, self gets considered last when self-sacrifice works. But when you run yourself thin, you quickly find the problem. You cannot feed the world if you're starving. It's that little corner of life that makes things a little strange. Paint yourself into a corner, can't afford to rearrange. All the furniture is burning off balance, photo frames. Modus operandi of over-apology and self-blame. Lucky find in the ashes at the end with a set of friends who stayed till I was human again. I mean, we all know art is hard. There's a song that says so, but the harder part is making art to heal and then deciding to let go. As a learning process, it's difficult and complex, a jagged and contrary puzzle, obtuse and obvious, cooked down to a gift of gab I can finally call my own, and I croon it from every corner of my cold black soul. Like everything cool, everything fine, 1 million thoughts colliding at the same time. Body pulling the paycheck, mind away to play, dreaming of salad days, Nintendo games, and Murray's hair pomade. I won't ever be the best at what I do, but this rap shit helps me quiet my demons and put them on display for you. Trying to close that little distance that exists between you and I, and every time it feels right, I feel it. Oh wait, I'm messing up. Browbeating the metronome, living in between the lines, trying to close that little distance that exists between you and I. And every time it feels right, I feel a little more alive. My rusty voice hogging your speaker, drunk drum a bass line. Makes my heart skip a comma, might choke out a smile. Bye for now, sincerely yours, Southside's Summer Child. Thank you.